Thousands of protesters have been occupying Wall Street since mid-September, but now similar demonstrations have spread across the country, even right here in our own backyard, Keener Plaza, downtown St. Louis. Here with his thoughts on just exactly what is happening down there and the legality of it all is Andy Crouppen from Brown & Crouppen. Andy, I hear you've got a vantage point on this one.
You know, I think that this is a movement that is largely misunderstood and portrayed as having a lack of message or not a clear and concise message. And I think what's happening is, you know, it'd be like if you took an automobile and said, well, what the hell's that for? Is this a place we go sit to cool down or heat up using the heating and air conditioning? Is this a storage facility where you put your stuff in the trunk? Or is this something that we get from point A to point B? And, you know, it's all of the above, but primarily it's a way to get from point A to point B.
Could be used for all those things, but it's really for travel.
Right. And so to misunderstand the automobile is in some ways to misunderstand the movement. The movement is clear. It's saying that 1% of the population, roughly, that makes $1 million a year or more and controls 90+% of the wealth in this country, along with the politicians, many of which are part of that 1%, are making policy and governing to largely affect how the 1% live and ignoring how the 99% live.
I will admit, it's very interesting to watch this unfold because you know, protests are nothing new in the States. That's part of our heritage.
Right.
This harkens back to, for a lot of folks, to the 60s, the 70s, the Vietnam era. But in the world of social media, this is very, very different. The way they communicate, the way they're able to convey their message, very different today.
This couldn't have been done probably 3 years ago. And I think what happened is we saw the Arab Spring, and this is now, some are calling it the American Fall. I don't know if this is going to end tomorrow or if this is going to go on for another 6 months. I think it's something that's gotten big to the point in so many cities, I think over 1,000 cities, that it can no longer be ignored. I think the message is clear if people want to hear the message. I think it's been going on long enough that when you see reports in the media or the newspaper that says that the message isn't clear, I think those people haven't taken the time to just go to the website and read 1 or 2 sentences about what the message is. Sure, there are tangential issues. Sure, there are people holding up signs that don't have the exact primary message, but I think there's a lot that goes along with that when you have this much turmoil in our economy.
We have to talk to you about the legal issues surrounding this. There was one night last week where there's a city curfew apparently in public parks. Protesters were warned, if you're not out of here by X o'clock, there will be some arrests made. We'll have to remove you. And sure enough, quite peacefully, that's exactly what happened. Is the city within their rights to do that? Does a group like this have to have a permit to stage a protest like this?
Sure. Freedom of speech is not absolute, meaning you can't say anything you want, anytime, any place. They have the right to make restrictions that don't restrict your speech, they just sort of restrict sometimes reasonably where you do it. For instance, there's a 10 o'clock curfew. They absolutely have the right to say, you know what, after 10 p.m. you can't be here. But what the police have done is they've allowed people to just kind of leave that little amphitheater area and go up on the sidewalk, and that's fine. So it was a reasonable accommodation to make, and I think what happened was the arrests were made over a curfew violation.
Okay.
They're misdemeanor offenses, not a big deal, usually resolved with a fine, nothing you have to report to an employer that really is going to affect you long term.
So in this case, the system, legal system, and system that allows you to voice your opinion seem to be working.
Yeah.
Okay, in harmony. In St. Louis, anyway.
Yes. And in most places, I think the police feel like, you know, they're being represented by the 99%. And in many cases, they're working with the people very peacefully and trying to make things go smoothly.
I've even heard sound bites from protesters saying that police are just trying to do their job.
Yeah.
So they're kind of lumped together, sure.
Yeah.
If you have a legal question for Brown & Crouppen, you can email us at